So from London, born and bred, grew up here, studied in Cambridge, came back to London and worked here all my life. Otherwise my parents both came to the UK. My mother's from Norway and my dad's from Nigeria. Well, since university I've worked in 5 different startups. I initially, after training as a management consultant, worked for a big sports startup called Sportal, which raised 100 million and spent it all in about 2.5 years. Went from there to Hutchison 3G, which was the largest startup in corporate history at the time, and is now the mobile phone company 3 in the pre-launch phase. Went back to work for my old CEO to help start up Jet Europe, which was a big private jet aviation business, which ended up getting sold into NetJets, which is Warren Buffett's company. Managed a band for a little while, my friend's band, and then worked for Warner Brothers, which was exceptionally dull and exceptionally boring, having worked in startup land, before then joining Inspired, which was the place I was in previous to starting up Metail. In terms of Metail, in my last role, I was head of gaming product development for a company called Inspired Gaming Group. I was in the process of trying to create the world's first live blackjack and baccarat game whilst I was there. And I wanted to use cameras to recognise cards as they're being dealt live in a casino, so that we could build a gaming engine off the back of it, so that you could play and back bet behind people who were playing live. Whilst I was doing that, I had tried to commission and license some technology from a bunch of guys incubated out Toronto University who were trialing card counting systems in an Indian reservation in San Diego. Couldn't get a deal done, so I was just sitting in my hotel room in Hong Kong thinking, I really want to make this new product for my last company that I was working for. How am I going to do it? So I just Google searched leading expert computer vision, and up popped Professor Roberto Cipolla at Cambridge University. So I just cold called him from my hotel room, not even thinking what time of day it was, and said to him, I want to create this system. How can I do it? Can I do it from scratch? And he said, yeah, no problem, come visit me. So I went to visit him. He introduced me to one of his ex-PhD students who I then worked with to build out the product. But the key thing that struck me whilst I was with him was that he showed me all of his research, and there was some really interesting stuff he'd done in going from photos of Antony Gormley statues to 3D shape. So, here's an Antony Gormley statue I'd made earlier. And I then went on holiday with my girlfriend to Vietnam, and she was spending a lot of time complaining about clothes shopping, and she had some stuff tailor-made in Hoi An. And I thought, well, instead of having to travel all the way to Vietnam, maybe based on this 2D to 3D shape technology, we could build a 3D version of you and save the plane fare. So I spent a lot of time researching what had happened since Boo.com. I don't know if you ever heard of that company. So I nearly joined Boo.com before joining Sportal. Instead of spending 100 million in 2.5 years, they spent 130 million in 18 months. It seemed like the timing was right to try and solve the online clothing fit problem. The growth of online clothing market had really exploded with ASOS and Net-a-Porter, etc. Lots of people in the past had tried to solve the problem but had failed. So there'd been lots of false prophets. There were about 25 companies in the early noughties that had pretty much gambled on different things, like there being a laser scanner in every shopping mall in every town in every country, which there wasn't. And they'd failed for various different reasons, but the prime reason being, in my mind, that they had failed to find a way of digitizing clothing really cheaply and really fast. So they were only ever marketing gimmicks, and they were really computer graphics oriented. They couldn't get consumers adoption really quick, so it was a really slow process. So I basically worked out that there were 3 core things that we need to try and solve to have a viable, potentially massive business, and that was around, could we build 3D versions of people really quickly from very simple information so that you could build something really fast? Secondly, could we digitize clothing really fast and really cheaply so that we could be part of the supply chain of a retailer and handle thousands of garments a week? Only by being a transactional tool and doing all of a retailer's garment collection could we be something interesting. And then the third piece was, could we then do the maths to fit garments together with bodies and present that to the user in a way that they would accept? So I then basically set about in 2008 trying to basically deliver that and deliver on that vision, and trying to solve those three initial core concepts that we needed to. So yeah, at the end of 2007, I decided to leave Inspired, and leave Inspired where the company was just about to be bought by Icelandic banks. So I was going to make options, my bosses were going to become wealthy, and my first investors in the business. 3 times the press conference was cancelled the night before, so it never happened. The Icelandic banks all went bankrupt. I never got my options. My bosses never became rich, but I felt so strongly about the potential for the idea that I went ahead anyway. I was naive, I think, at the beginning in terms of how quickly I thought I could raise funding. I mean, we just hit the credit crisis. It was like a disaster. But the credit crisis was good for me. My mortgage fell through the floor. But it took me 6 months to get my co-founder on board, who was that ex-PhD student up at Cambridge. And then I built out the business plan. I got interest in raising money, which gave me confidence that I could go out ahead and build this. And then I basically raised friends and family money to build that initial prototype and file first patents. And I raised that money at the end of 2008, so I've been bootstrapping myself until then. I was consulting back at my old firm 2 days a week. And then we built out the prototype and filed the first patent by September 2009.
Okay, so when was your first big breakthrough? First big client, or your first client?
First big breakthrough, I mean, back in March 2010, we raised then the first money to hire the first employee. So March 2010, first employee on the ground. We started building out the product properly, and we got early interest at that time from one of the biggest online retailers, and that was quite exciting. And that had come about through me having met somebody at a networking event who was a woman who had previously worked at TK Maxx, who then introduced me to the ex-editor of Draper's magazine, who then introduced me to the ex-CEO of Selfridges, who happened to be on the board of this big retailer. And they said, oh, come in and have a chat. And that was then, I think, sort of mid-2010, I think. And we started talking to them, and they became interested in what we were doing. And we started to build out the product with them in mind. And then I think the big breakthrough for us was the ability to see sort of a head on a body with clothes and put that together. And the delivery date for us to go into that meeting with the retailer was, I think, the last day of February 2011. We had this big meeting, which was going to be at 9:30, I think, in the morning, last day of February. The guys have been working all night. It was 8 o'clock in the morning. I still hadn't seen anything working. I had half an hour left before I had to go to this meeting. What we were going to do. I think then at 8:15, finally, something was working, and left home. We were on the train, using Wi-Fi to get sample images so that we could do a demo in the meeting. The meeting was going to be for 4 or 5 people. Got to the meeting, demoed it. It worked. They got really excited, and that was like, wow. It was literally the knife edge between success and failure. And I remember actually walking to the meeting, finding a penny on the floor, and I'm not superstitious, but I sort of felt, no, it'll be all right. It's going to be all right. And then I think 3 days later, I got a call from a guy, a money man, saying, "Can you be in Israel tomorrow? My client wants to meet you."
This is a labyrinth of it.
So I then I ended up flying out 2 days later for a 24-hour meeting with a guy who then later put 1.2 million into the business. So that was a really big moment for us. And I think in the January before the March, before the end of February, we were in a big crunch. We felt like we were not getting there fast enough in terms of the product. Our money was running out at that stage, and we went from money running out, nothing ready, to within a week, potential client really happy, deal done for another 1.5 million actually in the end of cash, and sort of looking in a really good place.